Welcome to a Pitch Fan Special. This week we're on the Championship. We've got the playoffs. Feel like a face-off between two fighters is going to happen here. I've got Des following Nottingham Forest, and we're quite fortunate enough to be joined by Jonny from Sheffield United. Now, lads, I hope this ain't going to be too intense. Intense beef would be the word I'd use in the past. How excited are we about the playoffs? What's going on?
We're Sheffield United. We're never excited about the playoffs, but we've got to try and look forward, not back at this one. I think we've got to try and put everything that's ever happened out of his heads and try and focus on the good and focus on what we can maybe do.
If you could say anything to a Nottingham Forest fan ahead of this game, what would it be?
Don't turn up in first leg. And gears more tickets.
Tickets.
Yeah. What have you done? What have you done to us with that? That's awful. After we were so kind as well.
Ticket allocations aside, how confident are you, Des, that your team, Nottingham Forest, will be victorious in the playoffs?
Well, I was really, really confident as we was climbing up the table and pushing teams like Sheffield United to one side as we went past them. Playing them off the pitch at their place, looking to get a result, mind. So, I was feeling confident. Last couple of games have just perhaps give a bit of realism back into the situation. And Jonny mentions there that Sheffield United and playoffs, you want to try being a Forest fan going into these things. We've had four previous playoff encounters, and we've never got past the semi-final stage. And we've basically blew up on each occasion. We've been two goals in front once at Sheffield United in 2003. So a lot of Forest fans are sort of harking back to that and feeling it's our day on. Well, it's our few days coming up for a big day at Wembley. Somewhere else we've never been in its new form.
2003, Jonny was about 7.
Bit older.
Running around in his Eric Cantona kit.
Jonny was absolutely spangled on the back of the cop, nearly in tears, thinking we've lost this. And then little Paul Pescasolido pops up and puts that ball in, and rest's a bit of a blur. One thing I want to bring up, though, is obviously you mentioned Forest have been in 4. We've been relegated by a playoff. We've been in 9 semi-finals and only got through 4 of them. And in all 4 of those playoff semi-finals, we've not even scored a goal. You don't want to lose in a final. If you're going to go out in a playoff, feel lucky that it's only ever happened in a semi-final. Because losing at Wembley once is bad enough. But one thing I do want to pick up on there is, you said it before as well, that you played us off the park and battered us at Bramall Lane. I don't get that. We're a 95th minute equaliser. And if you're going on just stats alone, well, Fulham battered us at weekend as well.
Now, 2 clubs that have been quite unlucky in playoffs have somehow managed to get matched together. So it makes quite an interesting conundrum. If it goes penalties, which I see it going over 2 legs, how confident are both of you guys that your team will be victorious?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned penalties because in that game at Bramall Lane, Brennan Johnson took a penalty and missed in the first half. That's where I think the floodgates might have opened, going back to Johnny's point there. But he tried to do one of these Panenka things, and he chipped it straight down the middle into the keeper's arms. Since then, he's had 2 penalties and he's put them in the corners as he should do, and scored. So it's interesting because as league teams, you don't often get penalty kick competitions, do you? You don't see the strength of how far you go down with your penalty kicks. But we've got, from my point of view, Forest got some tidy midfield players who strike the ball well. So I'd be pretty confident if it went all the way to that point. Would I take it now? I'm not so sure, but I'm sure this game's going to be tight and close over 2 legs. So potentially I see us going through that way.
Forest have scored 75 goals this season in the league. Quite a good tally. Johnson's been banging in goals. Are you confident that you can do the job? You can get a few goals during the game? How do you see it? Do you think it'll be a tight, close, wiry encounter, or do you think it'll be more of a goal fest?
I see the first leg being a little bit like that. I think if anybody does their own work on Forest, they'll think if they get in the face and try and sort of try and stop them playing, try and stop the strength which is down our right-hand side through Jed Spence and Brennan Johnson, that could make it very tight. We're really, really strong at the back as well. We're calling it the Great Wall of Nottingham with McKenna, Worrell and Cook. Really, really tight. And those goals you mentioned, 75, we're discounting the first 7 games because we got a point and we was still under Houghton. So there's lots of attacking options. We're strong at the back, but I think Sheffield United will try and contain us, especially in that first leg. And Sheffield United are resilient. You know, if there's one thing, I've seen Jonny saying that they were never going to get to the playoffs, and somehow they've managed to do it. So I think the first game, the second game might open up. I think Forest probably want a basketball game in reality. They want it end to end so we can get the ball into the channels for Johnson and let Zinkernagel and Garner do their magic. And if we get an early goal or Sheffield get an early goal, I can see it being a bit of a goal fest over the 2 legs and 7-7 perhaps.
Now, Jonny, at Sheffield United, you're blessed with having about 7 strikers. They haven't got the same goal return as Forest, but you're capable on your day of nicking a goal. Who do you think is going to be the most important players up top for Sheffield United? Who's the danger man for the playoffs?
Well, you say we've got 7 strikers. At the minute, we don't. We don't have 7 strikers. Billy Sharp's injured. David McGoldrick's injured. Ollie McBurney's injured. Lys Mousset is out in Italy getting fat. We don't have any fully recognised strikers. And lo and behold, Ndiaye and Morgan Gibbs-White have stepped up. Classically, you wouldn't really class them as strikers, but they have stepped up. But danger man-wise, I think it comes down to 2 players, and they were absolutely amazing versus Fulham, and that's Sanderberger and Ben Osborne. Now, Ben Osborne, you'll know a lot about him. There's on his day, when he's playing well, he's unplayable. He's brilliant. The problem is, if he's not playing at his best, he goes missing. But if we get the Ben Osborne that played against Fulham, he's going to cause any team chaos. And Sanderberger's just a cut above, not just any team in the Championship, but the rest of the team around him. And I think that's going to be important. If we get the best out of him, he's going to cause a lot of problems. As far as up front, I do think that Morgan Gibbs-White and Ndiaye are strikers in disguise. I think they can all make that position their own. I don't think they need to be classed as attacking midfielders anymore. They have a great partnership, a great understanding of each other. You know, when 2 players just get each other. And I think that's going to be really important.
Do you think the injuries have made it helpful that those boys have got a chance up front, where you've been so top-heavy with so many named, recognised strikers?
I don't think we've been top-heavy all season. That's one of the things that's cost us. We've been walking through an half-crippled squad all season. I do believe that with the job Paul Eckingbottom's done, I'm not going to be arrogant and say we could have pushed the top 2 like Forest did, but we could have done a lot better if we'd had a fully fit squad all season. Lys Mousset showed one glimpse of how good he can be, and then he was just awful. So off to Italy he went. McBurney's, you say he's a named, recognised striker. You know what? I'd trade 10 youth players for McBurney at this point in time. He's low on confidence. He doesn't fit the system that we play. If it's more, he'd do well for Forest, McBurney, with the way you play. He'd do really well in that team. But for us, it just doesn't seem to work. David McGoldrick's old and injured. Billy Sharp is just the main man. And him and Gibbs-White were forming a bit of a formidable partnership. But obviously, with Billy going out, luckily we had Ndiaye to step in. Because if we didn't have Ndiaye to step in, we could have finished outside the playoffs. We wouldn't have scored 4 on Saturday. There's a lot of games where we wouldn't have scored a lot of goals because we wouldn't have had that link-up play. And it's up to them now to keep that going. They've built that rapport, that understanding. And it's important to everybody at Sheffield United that keeps going, because otherwise we're going to be very toothless against Notts County. Notts Forest. Apologies, Des.
Yeah, it's an exciting one, isn't it? Like we mentioned, 2 teams that probably were expected to push Fulham and Bournemouth all the way this season, in my opinion. 2 of the better squads. I think Sheffield United have definitely done well to scrape themselves into the playoffs from where they were, especially with the changes. And as you mentioned, with the 7 games that Forest had at the start of the season that were thrown away. So now I guess it's a 1-game, 2-game competition whose tactics can get right over that period. I mean, it's interesting. What's your prediction for the game, Des? How do you see it playing out?
Well, like I said before, I see the first leg being particularly tight, perhaps a 0-0 even, 1-1. And then sort of coming back to the City ground on Tuesday, I see the game opening up. And Forest, when they've had these one-off games, the FA Cup run proves it against good opposition, good quality opposition. That gives me a lot of confidence. We played 3 Premier League teams and ran Liverpool all the way, beating Leicester and Arsenal on the way. So in that big crowd, big atmosphere, big game mentality, I think Forest have possibly got the edge there this season, just having that experience with the current crop. Again, the players are quite fearless, a lot of young players that have come into the situation. I can't remember your name. Well, Jonny mentioned...
No, I thought you meant me. Helder.
I know both your names. Jonny mentioned sort of Sheffield United players. I'm always wary of Billy Sharp, so fingers crossed he doesn't play, because he nicked one at the City ground earlier in the season as well from nowhere. So he's always a threat. And of course, he played for us at one point. Ben Osborne is another. I think he might actually have to spend a lot of time defending against Spence and Brennan Johnson. So that might nullify them. And of course, Berg is a quality. He's a Premiership player. So I think if we kind of get past those 3, I kind of look around the team and I think nothing else really worries me. I'd like a few of our players to be fit. We're missing strikers as well. Graben, Davis, who was a bit of a beast at Bramall Lane. I think talking to some Sheffield United fans, he was the one that stood out, and it looks like he's going to be missing. There is a hint he might be back, but he formed a partnership with James Garner. Jonny was mentioning our players sometimes just get each other. Them two had really clicked it off from midfield and attack and sort of working off each other, setting each other up. And we haven't quite got that. But Sam Surridge has come in. He's done a really good job. He can finish. So if we can get him into the positions to score goals, he can probably finish better than most of the strikers and most of the even Brennan Johnson and Garner to some degree. So if we get him in the positions, I think we've got chances. I think the game is going to have chances, even though it might be tight. Both defences are a big unit. So if you get the likes of Brennan Johnson and Morgan Gibbs-White sort of dropping deep a little bit and running at them, I think it will create chances. But like I say, I definitely see it being tight at Bramall Lane. If Forest could nick it, I think we go on and win it quite comfortably at home. If Sheffield United win it, it comes back and it's just an end-to-end basketball match, like I said before.
One thing I have been saying is, if the Blades have got any chance of getting to Wembley, we need a big performance in the first leg. As far as it being a tight game, that's a very big possibility. That's how it could turn out. A lot of people are saying 0-0, 1-1, and I can see that. I can see it, but I think that in United's heads, they know with the form you've been on at home, with the squad you've got and how G'd up you will be for it, even though you kind of stumbled to the finish. I think the Bournemouth result did knock you, but I think that your players will be mentally strong enough to come back from that. I do think that you've got it about you to come back from that kind of disappointment and think, well, we shouldn't even be here anyway, looking where we were at the beginning of the season. So I think the United players will be thinking, we need a big win in the first leg to take into the second leg to relieve that pressure. So if we go for it, it could end up 2 or 3-0 to us or 2 or 3-0 to you, depending on who's got the more about them on the day. Because we know that you like to attack. You're not a sit-back team. And when we're on his day, we're not either. So if we're both going at each other, I think United need a big win in that first leg to kind of get through to Wembley. Because otherwise, I don't want it to go to extra time because it's got it written stars, hasn't it? If it's 1-1 in first leg and coming up to 1-1 in 80th minute in second leg, you're going to get your revenge for the pesky time, aren't you? It's written in the stars for that to happen. So we need a big performance in that first leg. And while it could be tight, like Des has said, I think both teams have it in them if they want to just attack each other. In the first leg, that'd suit us a lot more. Full house, noise behind them. It would suit us a lot more in that first leg to be going at each other's throats. Whereas if either team come in, Forest or United come in to just set up shop and feel the other team out, that really does us a disservice and it can make it very difficult in that second leg.
Mm-hmm. What's been your moment of the season that's impacted your team getting to the Championship? So I watched Forest's win over Fulham recently. That seemed like quite a powerful moment, looking from the outside in. But what's been both your moments that's impacted the team's form to get there?
Well, I think you mentioned that Fulham game. That was almost sort of establishing yourself as showing how far we'd come. You know, early in Cooper's reign, we got done over 4-0 by Fulham, and to go away when they were still looking for points for the Championship, get that result, which gave us a chance at Bournemouth. It was quite an emotional night, to be honest. You know, the performance, the we all get pride of our football teams and a little bit over the top, but you know, I was there and I just really thought this team's come a long way, and even if we didn't do it, which ultimately we didn't, you know, that just shown that we've given it a good go. We've come a long way over the season and really sort of pushed on. But for me, some of the games earlier, sort of mid-season away games like Millwall away, we went and won 1-0. Millwall, I was thinking this when Jonny was talking, Millwall really went at us hard for 40 minutes. And Forest struggle with that sometimes. But if they deal with it, if they cope with it and get the result, they ended up nicking a 1-0, 90-something minute, 92nd minute or something like that. And we went away to Swansea when Swansea was still a playoff contender, I guess. And we won 4-1. And we had 25% of the ball, but it was kind of a turning point in the season where I thought, now Forest are establishing themselves. At home, you know, you can go on runs and you can get a couple of last-minute winners, but when you're doing it sort of week on week and week and winning away on a regular basis, stringing 2, 3, 4, 7, 8 games sometimes together as wins, as at the end of the season, we won 9 out of 10 before going to Bournemouth. That tells you that you're a really, really good side. So for me, it was just that, it was the groundwork almost, building that resilience that I mentioned about Sheffield United, some of those results. And what happened was we tend to have a bad result just before the FA Cup games. And what that almost allowed us to do was use the FA Cup as a free hit to get back into form. So again, it was people questioning whether the team it was going to drop off and it was all a bit of a flash in the pan. But they went into those big games and shown that they're big game players, big game mentality, and got the results, and then went on another series of great results, which has ultimately pushed us up the table. As the season sort of progressed, we were lingering around in ninth till early April, and then over the space of 2-3 games, we went. But like I say, it was all that groundwork and those important away wins. Those two, Millwall and Swansea, particularly stick out for me. But a real highlight as well, just before we sort of moved to Jonny, was the Swansea game at home. We won 5-1, and that gives me real confidence. The last two have been away. Bournemouth was obviously almost winner takes all. And then Hull, it might look like we dropped off at the end of the season. We lost to Bournemouth, which is sort of doable. You know, they're a good side. They've proved that. Hull, we made changes. I must admit, they were trying to push on late. They must have fancied Luton because they brought all the big boys on and all the urgency were there to give it a go to get the point. So they must have been thinking, right, we want to finish third, we want to get Luton. But the Swansea game at home really fills me with confidence for when we come back next week. We won that 5-1, and we absolutely crucified them. I mentioned the 4-1 before, but this time, rather than have 25% possession, we just absolutely battered them. We could have had 10 that day. I think they were going for goals as well for the playoffs. So and the atmosphere in that was incredible. I'm just expecting next Tuesday to be an extension of that and all that great feeling around the place just to take us through.
Jonny, what's been your moment of the season? What defined and epitomised Sheffield United's playoff push and run? What was that changing moment for you?
You see, we've been ourselves an inconsistent team all season. You look at when Chris Wilder made his return to the lane with Middlesbrough. We won 4-1, battered them, played them off the park. Then the very next game, we went off and we lost 4-1 to Coventry away. So it's very late in the season, and with only 2 games left, I have to pick one of my moments of the season as that defining moments, is that second half at QPR. First off, we were dreadful. We couldn't string 2 passes together. We looked weak, we looked frail, we looked mentally off of it. In the second half, a different team came out of that tunnel. I don't know what was said, what was done, what was either ripped into them or reminded to them. But a different team walked out of that tunnel. And they didn't just show a better performance. They showed fight, desire, and just a will to put the game to bed and give everything they've got. You started seeing players that have been off the boil for a while, putting their bodies back on the line. And we did think after we won that game, as much as a winning on a Friday night in London's always a good laugh, we thought, well, we've got Fulham coming up next. We all fear the worst because when we play well, we seem to have a bad second game. But to then follow that up and bring that same passion, that same fire into the next game was a breath of fresh air. So I think that second half, that half-time team talk at QPR, whatever was said, has defined how this season's going to end. Because if all my pessimism and fears go out of the window, and I mean, we've had some good results. We beat Fulham 1-0 at home. We beat them at their ground. We beat them 4-0 at our ground. We've beat teams that are up there. We seem to have struggled against the teams that are struggling, if that makes sense. So there's been a lot of highlights of the season, but never anything that got us on a roll. And I know it's only 1.5 games, but something felt different when we walked back out that tunnel for the second half at Loftus Road. Something felt, dare I say it, nostalgic back to the season where we went up the first time a few years back. That team spirit seemed to come back. And if that can continue, my fears and doubts will fade. So my defining moment is that second half.
Who'd you rather play, Luton or Huddersfield?
Luton. It's Luton.
Same for you, Des. Luton or Huddersfield?
I think so. And we feel we've got a bit of a score to settle. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, they beat us and there was a lot of controversy around it. But we seem to think if we get them on the big pitch at Wembley, you know, it's going to be our game all day long. Huddersfield are just that team who go about the business, aren't they? And they just tick along, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's got them to where they've shown the consistency. But I think if we beat Sheffield United, definitely Luton on the big pitch.
The only reason I've picked Luton is I've still got PTSD from last time we played Huddersfield at Wembley.
Now, the playoffs is going to be a remarkable occasion. It's great to have you boys both on to discuss it and you being so amicable and so relaxed. I hope you maintain the same energy for game day.
Nope.
And if you do come across each other, make sure you've got a half and half scarf each.
Yeah.
That'd be brilliant. That'd be absolutely brilliant. Share a pie with each other. And
not at Lane. Don't get a pie at Lane. They're awful.
Hopefully it goes penalty shootout. We all love a penalty shootout.
Stop it, James. Stop that. Go now. No more penalties. No.
We love it.
Sheffield in Nottingham, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Be good. I'm excited for it, lads. I say it's good. It's going to be a real showpiece game, same as the Luton Huddersfield game, or Huddersfield Luton game rather. So yeah, let's see. May the best team win. Thank you very much for your time today. It's great to get you both on, and I look forward to conversing with you after the playoffs. Let's go.